Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 92 of the Board Game Barrage. I'm your host, Neelan, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Mark and Kellen. Very special co-host this week, the Blue Tank, has graced us with her presence.
She's back.
Hello.
Now in HD audio once again.
Yes. If you
stereo. Oh no, is it mono?
It's mono, unfortunately.
Oh, too bad.
Right. Because yes, if you heard our previous episode, you'll recall that was the episode we recorded live on stage at SHUX.
SHUX 2019
with
Vancouver, Canada.
The Gothic Tank.
Yes.
Quinn Smith.
We named and crowned the Gothic Tank on our panel. So that was obviously a very cool experience that we all just got back from and we were still recovering from. At least I am.
Blue Tank, you weren't on the panel.
How does it feel to be among the hoi polloi?
I was not on the panel, but there was a different panel you guys were on, and a woman on stage with you literally said, "Why aren't you on stage?" and tried to get me to come up. So I think that's pretty clear evidence.
We could have used her for that panel.
She did she did explain, Christina, to me that she felt awkward at one point because she was the only person in the audience at the beginning of that panel.
Oh, I
wearing
explained this.
Like full
Yeah.
BGB
t-shirt. I looked like a ridiculous, like their number one fan. I had on a Board Game Barrage t-shirt and I had on a ton of buttons and I was the only one in the audience just sitting there waiting, watching the stage.
Staring intently at the stage. That's great. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about more games we played at SHUX. We obviously covered a lot last week. Let's get into a few more. Our feature topic this week is going to be games that we recognize may not be mechanically solid, but for whatever reason we love. Games that sort of maybe transcend the mechanics and become very solid experiences despite being recognizably substandard in their design, let's say. That's coming on later in the show. Let's start off by talking about more of the games we played at SHUX. I know I had a great time playing some games with you guys there. Kellen, anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think it's always helpful to sort of roughly categorize conventions for people. So I've now attended Origins, Gen Con for a number of years, and SHUX as well as the local Strategicon. Yep. SHUX fits into the playing board games type of convention over the Gen Con type of convention, which is a bunch of new releases. With that said, it still has a nice little demo area for publishers. And what's cool about that is there's not a very big attendance at SHUX, so there is not a lot of lines to get right in and demo games at SHUX. I would describe SHUX as having a younger crowd, I would say, and a more diverse crowd than any other convention I've been at. It's definitely not the normal Gen Con audience. I've never been to a PAX event, Neelan. I know you have, but that was the biggest thing in my mind that stuck out, that it was maybe the most similar to that sort of audience.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. So I've been to PAX Unplugged. I went to the inaugural convention, and it's definitely a very similar vibe. Sort of a smaller, low-key, just sort of a more homey and more friendly. You just feel like you're going there to hang out with people and play board games. The expo hall is less of a focus, unlike a big industry event like Gen Con, like you said. The focus is on just hanging out, playing a bunch of good board games with your friends.
Yeah, if you just looked at like even just square footage devoted to game playing versus demoing,
right?
The game playing square footage triples, I would say, the demo section of the con.
Absolutely. And to their credit, they had a fantastic games library.
Yeah.
So you could just walk up, grab any number of games you've been itching to play, and
Yeah, I was very impressed by the library itself, which was really, really central. So I think that kind of emphasizes the focus on gameplay as well.
Yeah.
But I had this feeling when I was walking through the library, kind of like when you walk through a book library, of like awe, like, oh my gosh, almost any game that I've ever wanted to play is here and I can just pick it up and play it. Like, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah. You're almost going, okay, I want to play this and this and this in both your hands. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was really, really cool. I loved the library.
Yeah. And the check-in and check-out process for the games was really smooth, which is something I appreciate as well.
Well, and I think like at Gen Con, even getting to the library, it's in the Lucas Oil Stadium, so it's like a 20-minute walk, or getting into the hot game room costs tickets, and so there's more barriers to getting to just be playing games. I think for Board Game Barrage, it was definitely a different convention that we've ever had before. You know, we were part of 3 different panels, so the panel with Quinn's where we recorded last week's episode. We had a fantastic co-panel with So Very Wrong About Games, another board game podcast that we admire and respect. And that panel was called Why Board Game Reviewers Hate Your Favorite Games. The way to gain access to this recording of this panel would be to become a Patreon subscriber for Board Game Barrage at any tier, or to be a patron of So Very Wrong About Games.
Why not be both?
Why not do both? So yeah, I think that skewed the con for us. You know, we weren't able to do our nightly episodes that we like to do because we were out and about and planning for these panels and meeting different listeners. We had a fantastic time meeting everyone who came out to SHUX, who supported us and came to those panels. So a real sincere thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Had some great games. Played some great games.
It was a really fun weekend for all of us. We got a chance to hang out with Quinns, which I think we were all excited to do, which was great.
Super fun, super nice guy.
Yeah.
Just as fun and nice and
hilarious.
Yeah, as he is on the podcast and on the video, so that was great.
You liked me best, though.
I think that's a mischaracterization of Quinn's opinion.
I also want to second the sense that it was a very welcoming convention. The only other convention I've been to is Origins, so not a ton of experience there, and Strategicon, but it's small. But I definitely felt like an openness, a sense that everyone was willing to play games with everyone.
Right.
Everyone was really, really nice. It was just very comfortable and friendly and fun.
Yeah, it seemed in some ways like family oriented too. I saw a lot of kids playing and like they seemed to be having fun and really like playing the games a lot, so it's cool.
So one of the games that Christina and I got to play is actually a review copy that we brought in our suitcases with us. This is Kingdomino Duel, the Kingdomino roll and write. So if you know anything about me, you may assume that I am going to hate this game because, you know, you took a basically not that great game, Kingdomino, and then you made a 2-player version, which I don't like, and then you made it a roll and write, which I abhor.
But in reality, he hates it because he lost.
No. Kingdomino Duel is simple and clever and I think good. We'll have to play it more to really bear it out, but the way that it works is that you have 4 really chunky dice, which I'm holding in awe for Mark and Neelan.
Clink them.
Yeah. Okay, what are you guys like getting ahead of me? I know how to do my job.
You're moving too slow.
And I did that in front of my microphone, which is the most expensive microphone, because we give the talent the good microphone.
All right, enough of the clinking.
So in Kingdomino Duel, you will roll 4 dice on your turn. The A player will get to choose one of the 4 die. The B player will take 2, and then the A player will get what is left over. Then you must take those die and arrange them in a domino pattern. So, you know, either to the left, to the right, together, and then you must place them on your board and fill in those symbols. So there are 6 different shield icons. Emanating out of the middle is a castle, and any symbol can connect to the castle, but from that symbol, you must connect like kind. So if a black shield is next to it, then the next domino, quote unquote, that you place would need to be orthogonally adjacent to that in that pattern. These dice also have black X's next to them, which are score multipliers. So you're actually choosing between score multipliers for end of game scoring or special bonus powers that are on the back of any player map. That was a nice sound too, right? So ultimately, if you have a group of 3 black shields at the end of the game touching each other, those are worth 0 points. But if there are 2 black X's in that pattern of 3, that's worth 6 points for black shields at the end of the game. But if you ever mark off a black shield that doesn't have any X's, that gets you points towards getting a bonus special power. And whoever gets to the special power first is the one that will get the special power, and the other player gets nothing. That allows you to sort of modify the dice, destroy things, split a domino in 2, and do numerous special powers. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. We could probably get through a game here in 20 minutes. It is only 2-player, unfortunately. There is something fun, which is the first player taking 1, the second player taking 2, and then the first player getting 1 piece at the end. Christina, what did you think of Kingdomino Duel?
Yeah, it was really fun. I liked it a lot. I think I like roll and writes more than you in general, and 2-player games more than you. But this
that sounds like a relationship problem.
There was some fun, a little bit of hate drafting, which is always good. As small and simple and straightforward as it is, there was still a lot of tension in deciding which ones to pick, and should I pick one that's good for me or hate draft so that Kellen loses, which he did. So yeah, no, I loved it. It played really fast and it was really good.
This might be a very small nitpick, but I'm not really seeing the Kingdomino connection. Like, it doesn't seem that similar to Kingdomino.
How does choosing tiles in Kingdomino work?
So the tiles are assigned a number, and then the lower numbers are the better tiles. Mm-hmm. And so if you select one of the better tiles, you are going to go later in turn order. Yeah. So the push and pull there is like selecting a good tile will mean in the next round of selecting, you are going to go last, presumably. There's also the multiplier thing that is in Kingdomino where you score points for adjacent land masses of the same type. And the points you score are equal to the size times whatever multipliers you have.
So I guess that part is tangentially similar, like connecting up similar symbols or land masses and then getting the multiplier on.
The power thing is not
at all there, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something really simple about even the different shield icons in the game, because one of the shields is a dot. One of the shields is 2 diagonal lines and one is a checker pattern. And so when you fill those in, it isn't just writing A, B, C, D, or E. It's like you draw that, which just makes it a little bit more fun in the very straightforward roll and write way. Yeah, I don't think it needs the Kingdomino theme.
Right.
The theme is a magician rolling 2 chunky dice. So that could be Neelan.
Is it a Victorian? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It is.
It does look like me.
He looks Victorian.
And he is got some chunky dice in his hand. So as a final word on Kingdomino Duel,
the end.
I was hoping for a bigger Christina laugh.
Sorry.
Mark.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about a game we played with a bunch of listeners. This was Panic on Wall Street. This is a game where there are 2 winners. The game is sort of split into 2 sections. There's a group of players who are investors and there's a group of players who are managers. And the managers are going to bid in an auction to gain stock round over round. And then the investors are going to negotiate with the managers over the price of the stock to buy the stock. And then every round you're going to roll some dice to see how the stocks move. Some stocks are more volatile and will allow you to get bigger gains or big losses. And some are more straightforward that just move steady but don't allow you for big gains. And so the blue stock is the most placid of the stocks. It's the one that doesn't move up or down very much. So if you're a manager who has a blue stock that you're trying to sell to one of the investors, you could say, like, you're going to gain for sure if you get this. Like, it's not moving very much, so you're definitely going to get $30. So give me 25 and make your 5 automatic dollars. And if you're owning one of the red stocks, which are the ones that are very volatile, you can say, come on, you're losing. You need a big gain, so buy my red stock. So that takes place in real time. Once the clock ends, any deals that haven't been finalized don't happen. And then, as I said, dice are rolled and you see where the stocks move, and then you collect your earnings if you're the investors, and the managers collect the money from those investors and then pay some fees per stock they own. And you do this 5 times and everybody has a good time because they're screaming at each other. And yeah, what did you guys think?
We were screaming.
Yeah,
we attracted many crowds.
Right.
Like they just
onlookers.
Yeah.
What are these guys playing?
Yeah.
I loved this game. I loved it.
It was really fun.
Isn't there someone on the Discord who didn't get to play with us but said, I heard you guys playing Panic
Yes.
on Wall Street.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I was so happy to play this again. I haven't played this in maybe 5 years. I think the friend you had it moved out of the city, and I'm surprised you have this and we haven't gone to the table since. But now, having now played this at SHUX, we have to play this
For
more.
sure.
It's so simple. You can explain the game fairly easily, and there's something really clever about the 2 games in parallel.
Yeah.
Like, the managers aren't that worried about how the investors are doing, but it's everything to them that they have them buy their stock. So it's this fun entwined system between the 2 teams, as it were.
So I don't want to be the Debbie Downer of this one, but I'm less sold on Panic on Wall Street. I've only played it the once, and you guys have played it more. And I was a bit tired when we played it as a result of carrying all the panels on my back.
Wow.
But I think that I played the investor game, and the investor game is one of increments in a sense that the actual deals that you're making are all, it's either $10, $20, or $30. So most of the time in a round, a red stock is going to go for 20 or 25. And so the actual game that you're playing is just trying to get like $5 less than the player to your left or your right. Getting a manager to agree to that.
Yeah.
And it's very, very incremental in that sense, and it didn't feel like you could it was hard to make a brilliant play. It was just about like out arguing for like $5.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It sounds like
awesome.
Mark's life. But and then the culmination in the die roll that is kind of an LOL what the moment, because you have no control over it and it can just really hose you. And I think that you have to know that going in. So it's
You
like
have to not be a tryhard.
Yes, exactly. It's this weird combination of you must care in order to fully participate in it, but then you also can't care too much because your fate ultimately is really, you could lose the game 10 times in a row from just like sheer bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like a party game, right?
Yeah.
You don't really care if you, well, you care, but it's not like...
It's a very, very niche party game if it's a party game. It's good. I'm very happy. Like, it's been on my list of, oh my God, I haven't played this. I would love to play it again. But if it's a quote-unquote party game, like, it's very, very specific.
The one specific thing I do like about it is that and Mark, maybe you, because it's been a while since I played the manager side of it, and I didn't in the last game, but the managerial side of it is a little bit more on the strategic end, and that it's more of like a pure like auction style, just getting expected value for your
Sure,
kid,
I would
right?
agree with that. Yeah.
There's no luck element from the manager side.
Right.
I guess unless a stock tanks, then it affects your thing. But that doesn't really affect you to the same extent, does it?
It sort of does. I mean, buying the red stock, there is like the idea that if you buy it when it's at its height,
you're expected to get more from it, and then if it tanks, it's suddenly,
right, and there's no control that you have.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is that because, like Kellen said, the investor game is a lot more luck heavy, you can effectively have people of different skill levels or different levels of interest in that style of game in the same game. If someone just wants to play the haha, I'm going to roll the dice and get lots of money game, then there's a game for them there that's still fun.
Yeah.
And if you're invested in the auction and the negotiation and the selling your good type of game, that's there too.
Yeah. And there is some skill involved in the mitigation and following what your opponents are doing. Like, yeah, you are sort of at the mercy of big swings in the volatile stocks, but if you are losing, you may know that you need to invest more in the volatile stocks and make sure that you take them over. And if you're winning, then if you see your opponents pick up the volatile stocks, you may just want to pick up the same number of them just to keep them at arm's reach. I think it's certainly a niche game. Whether it's a party game or not, it's a niche game for sure, because you need at least, I would say, 6 minimum to play.
Absolutely.
So it's,
I do feel like I had a more fun experience being on the manager side. Some of my favorite parts were during the auction. Like, I was really egging Mark on and trying to get him. I was, no, you can't let Chase. It can't be that cheap. Come on.
Yeah, right.
And so Mark and I were really, really egging each other on. That was so fun, kind of evaluating how much money they had and how much each stock was worth at different parts of the game. So I could see how the investor side was maybe a little bit less engaging. But really my only problem with it was the way we were sitting.
Yeah.
I did not make a single deal with the investor that was on the opposite diagonal side from me. We did not make a single deal. And I think Kellen had the same thing because he was diagonal from Chase.
Right.
And I don't think they made very many deals. So that, I mean, I guess that could be fixed by sitting at a circular table.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
But for us, it was like that probably hurt everybody on the ends.
I agree. That's big.
This is actually the biggest discrepancy for me between, if you ask me to rank games that I have not played but think would be in my top 50, I think Panic on Wall Street would easily be in the top 3. That's how excited for this game I have been over the years, and perhaps playing it at a con when I'm super, 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 super tired was a bad choice. So I'm excited to try it again. I think we should get a rousing, full player count of it and scream at each other.
Yeah. And that was Panic on Wall Street, also known as Masters of Commerce, if you want the other version of it.
Huh. Okay.
I don't.
We also played, and all of us were in this, at least for one round, we also played Blood on the Clocktower. Specifically, we started off, all 4 of us, in the same game of the Troubled Brewing scenario, which, if you're familiar with Blood on the Clocktower, is the more introductory, so the recommended first game. This hews it closer to Werewolf. Is that right, Kellen?
Yeah, and that's something that Mark Nealon and I have played twice before at a pre-release party.
Yes. So this would be the 3rd time that the 3 of us had done Trouble Brewing specifically. For a very quick overview of what this is, as I already alluded to, this is very similar to Werewolf in that you are a group of people. There's a moderator. You're all given a role, which is either going to put you on the good or the evil team. So the evil team has one player who is a demon, and then the rest of the evil players are minions. The evil team knows who everyone is. The good players don't know anything. Everyone has a unique role that's assigned to them, and it is 100% a unique role that no one else in the game has. What's actually really interesting about Blood on the Clocktower is that in between the different scenarios, there are no crossover roles. So in Trouble Brewing, all of these roles are specific to Trouble Brewing, and only one person in the game has them. The game alternates of a series of days and nights. During the day, it's just discussion. You're trying to figure out who's in your team, find out what information you can, pull people aside. So there's people going off into the corners of the rooms and you're wondering what they're talking about. There's a lot of paranoia going out. At the end of the day, there is a quick phase where the moderator will determine if anyone wants to execute someone during the night. So everyone in the group will sort of nominate people to potentially be executed, and then you will vote on whether that person gets executed or not. Once that happens, that person is dead, and then you go into a night phase. In the night phase, everyone's abilities, if they have abilities that trigger in the night, happen. The demon gets to kill one more player, and you wake up, reveal anything that's happened, find out who died in the night, and start another day. This keeps going until one of two things happen. Either there are two people left. If one of those players is the demon, then the evil team wins. Or if at any point the good team kills the demon through an execution or other ability, then the good team wins. So this could take anywhere between, I want to say like maybe 45 minutes to 2 hours in a longer game. And it's just this elaborate sort of series of rounds where you're firing off your abilities as often as you can. There are a bunch of different status effects like being drunk or poisoned where your abilities misfire. And all of this is handled by the moderator, who very aptly is called the storyteller in Blood on the Clocktower, because they're dictating a lot of the course of the way that the game unfolds. I want to start off by saying that, so now having played Blood on the Clocktower 4 times in longer games, so all of our games seem to be in the hour-and-a-half range, and having tried 2 different scenarios, because on the second game we played Sects and Violence, which is a completely different scenario with different things.
Not what it sounds like.
Yes, that's spelled SECTS.
And Violets. VIOLET.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was okay. I didn't know that. That's
Mark
great.
and I were studying.
There's neither
Not a
sex nor violence
Right.
in Sex and Violets.
Having now played this 4 times, I have enjoyed every game I've played of it. For me, it's a really strong social experience where, at least all the times I've played it, the joy is in finding a friend to latch onto, finding someone to trust, sharing your information to them, not really knowing whether they're lying, finding a way to test whether people in the group are lying by using your ability or by using trusted friends' ability. And, a fair amount of bluffing, manipulation with a veneer of deduction. I don't think it's possible to know anything concretely except in very, very rare circumstances, but you're sort of threading the needle on the knowledge you have in order to sort of build stories, basically. So I might come to the conclusion that, okay, I think I can trust you, and if I can trust you, therefore this is maybe true, and maybe this is true. And you go down that path towards the end until the storyteller changes something. Like I said, I've enjoyed this in every game I've played of it, and I'm looking forward to getting more of it.
Who did you trick into trusting you, Neelan? Demon?
I think I had Kellen going for a substantial portion of game 2.
Confirmed.
Confirmed that I've won, I think, every game of Blood on the Clocktower I've played losers.
I think I've won every game as well.
Me too.
Did the good guys win the second game?
Wait, what? You guys didn't even play the last game.
Well,
Every game I've played,
I've
I've
won.
won.
Yeah.
Maybe who knows? And we're all winners here. That's, if you know anything about our podcast, we always win. Get that right. I think that Neelan is speaking with a little bit of trepidation in his voice, a little bit of a hint of what's to come.
Yeah, definitely bearing the lead on this a little bit.
I had fun with it. Maybe if that's a interesting way to talk about it. I think that Blood on the Clocktower is a social experience. I think that Blood on the Clocktower. So my experience with social deduction games is when you have a game like The Resistance Avalon, Daniel. The first 20 games of The Resistance Avalon are spectacular for me because it leans closer to social than it does the deduction, because the perfect meta or the perfect way to play or the perfect way for a Mordred to vote in the second round where he knows who Morgana is but doesn't know who Merlin is, blah, 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 hasn't been sussed out by the group, and the perfect deduction hasn't happened. Blood on the Clocktower leans so far to the social that I'm not sure that it contains any real deduction. I think that And I explained this to a lot of people at Blood on the Clocktower, huge advocates for Blood on the Clocktower, that I compare it to a MacGuffin, which is a film term for the thing that you are chasing in a film, but that isn't actually important to the story. Marvel films are notorious for having these where they're trying to get all the crystal stones, or JRPGs are notorious for having this, an element that you have to collect all of the things, but collecting the things itself actually doesn't matter and just serves to move the narrative along. I'm not convinced that Blood on the Clocktower contains actual deduction, but the chasing of that deduction is the game. Like, if you're not willing to concede and engage and attempt to chase the deduction, you won't have fun in the game. But then I'm not sure that you can actually ever arrive there. Reason being, you can be poisoned. There can be a vortex in the game, which just means everyone's information is wrong. You could also be drunk, and so all of your abilities are firing falsely. So there just does not appear, or doesn't always seem to be a way to perfectly prove via deduction hardly anything. With that said, it's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun playing it. I will continue to play it. When Neelan wants to be the DM, I will laugh at him at his pathetic attempts at DMing. We played in some games with, I think, some of the best DMs that Blood on the Clocktower has, and had just a fantastic time. It is a game that tells stories.
All right.
Is it time?
It's time. Yeah, I think we're going to have a green tank, blue tank alliance here. I have played this game 3 times, as Neelan has mentioned, and each of my experiences have gotten progressively worse. I'm not a fan of this game really at all. I think the problem for me is that I went into the games thinking of it as a social deduction game, stressing the deduction and game part of it. We talked about this after our play of it as we were walking back to our hotel. And I think for me, this is much more along the lines of a storytelling game, something along the lines of Once Upon a Time, or what's the game, Ye Dark Overlord? I think that's another storytelling game. And if I had that outlook going into this game, I might have enjoyed it more. Kellen's point about the MacGuffin is very apt. My argument countering that would be that, and he sort of alluded to this in his explanation, he said that the MacGuffin is chasing the deduction, but it may not be there. Is that sort of correct? And I would argue that it is not there. And I think that it's hard to... There is the thinnest veneer of it being there. I think once you see all these negations and these possible bits of misinformation, which is exacerbated, in my opinion, exacerbated by the fact that the storyteller has some sway into the gameplay, I think that veneer drops very quickly. And at least for me, I just realized that the deduction was not a thing. And so the idea that I'm playing a deduction game where I cannot deduce anything feels, I would say silly to me. But I will grant that, again, if I'd gone into it thinking that it was just a storytelling game, I would have had a much better experience. Another thing I said on our walk back was that I think you should go into a game like this seeing yourself less of a player and more of an actor. The idea is that you get great stories from this game, but the idea that you're trying to win it is sort of a non-starter. It's just hard for me coming into the game thinking of it as a competitive affair. I just think that it fails on that respect.
I think what sums up what Mark is saying is there was a point during the game, after the first game, Mark and I decided to abscond to the cheap seats, and we were studying the sheet of everybody's roles, and we were actually looking at, what is it called?
The Grimoire.
We were looking at the...
Grimoire.
But what was the thing called?
Grimoire.
It's a Grimoire.
We were looking at the Grimoire, and we were confused, but we were just kind of like, okay, let's try and figure this out. At one point, someone playing the game turned to us and said, do you guys know what's going on? And Mark just laughed and said, we have no idea. And so I think the interesting thing is that for Mark and I, that was horrifying. But for the players who kind of heard that interaction, they were delighted. Yeah. They were like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like, this is so, like, that actually enhanced the experience, that it's so crazy that we couldn't even figure that out. Yeah. And I think that's actually really interesting. And if that's appealing to you, then this is the perfect game for you. I think for me, I am even more in the minority than Mark because I just don't really like social deduction games. So I'm very much in the minority here. And I was obviously willing to give this a try as a different social deduction game, but I had basically the same experience that I typically have, which is extreme anxiety and fear.
I think that a great anecdote in our second game when we played Sex and Violets was there's one big baddie, one big demon in each game. And in Sex and Violets, there is a way for more big baddies to be created. One of the big demons says that all information that every player receives will be false. And that's the Vortox. And so that just means literally every time, a seer type character says, is there a bad player? Every time anyone gets any information, it's false. And so at the beginning of the game, we were relatively certain we didn't have a Vortox. And so we got through the first night or two and we're like, okay, there's no Vortox in the game, so we can trust our information. Great, guys. And then we woke up 2 or 3 nights later and suddenly all of our information started not making sense. And so we all got very paranoid that someone had created a Vortox during the night. And so we were all looking at each other, kind of going, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to fix this? I was the artist. And the artist in the game can ask one yes or no question to the DM that they have to answer to you truthfully. Once per game. And I didn't want to use this power. I wanted to use it in some kind of flashy sort of way. And a player seriously bullied me, really peer pressured, leaned into it and was like, well, you have to ask, the DM, are you the artist? Because I had already revealed to the group that my role, meaning that if I went to the DM and said, am I the artist? And they said no, then we would know that a Vortox was in the game. And so it was very silly, I didn't really want to do it because I wanted to save it, but I was being told by the group at large that I had to do it. So I went over, I did it, and I got told that I, in fact, was not the artist, which was oh my God, everyone starts kind of not screaming, but it became there's a Vortox in the game, there's a Vortox in the game. And that helped us. We went on for 2 more nights. And one of the funny things about the night phase is a lot of things are happening, but you're allowed to continue talking. And all of a sudden, in the 2 night phases later, the same player was like, I don't think I believe Kellen anymore, about what he asked the DM. And I was like, wait a minute, you made me do, I didn't want to do that. You peer pressured me. Why do we believe you? And so that is an example of the social dynamics that come into play that that couldn't happen in Avalon. Avalon is too pure to have that level of weird, random, LOL, how is this going to happen? And so what Blood on the Clocktower does is there are 3 scenarios. There are 20 roles in each of them. It's a mix of what you're going to get. You're going to open it up. You're going to play a scenario, and there's just that weird mix of roles that you probably haven't played before, and that's going to make it different. There's going to be a lot of LOL what, and that's fun. That's cool. That's interesting. Whether that's a good game or not, I think is sort of the impetus for our feature topic tonight. And I don't know that we're ever going to agree on Blood on the Clocktower.
Yeah. I want to counter one thing real quick, because I feel like there are potentially big fans of this game shouting at us right now, because I do actually think that despite what you guys are saying, there are not necessarily, I hesitate to say concrete deductions that you can make, but there are limits to the misinformation. Only one player is drunk. Only one player can be poisoned. So if you test something enough, you can come to a specific
unless there's a Vortox, unless the Vortox has been created.
But that's the thing. You can also test for the existence of those, as proven by Kellen's specific example. You can, over the course of requiring enough information from enough people in the group, narrow down very specific pieces of information that I think that we're wholly discarding as something that is entirely nonsensical and entirely misinformation. I don't think that's actually factually true.
If it's not factually true, I feel like it's true enough to be true.
I would say to people that are not super familiar with the role set, as any of us are, that is almost certainly true. I have not got the grip of all the roles. Obviously, how could I? How could any of us? But it was very telling that some of the experienced players in the game that we played were coming to very specific information sooner than anyone else in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think, as much as I say I don't like social deduction, I do think it would be fun if you have the same group and you play with over and over enough to where you do learn some of the roles better to where you can get to the point of deduction. I do feel like that's true.
I agree. I think once you start to internalize roles, you get more solid inroads. Whether it's ever actually concrete, the jury's still out from our perspective at least, but I do believe you get more in that direction than our intro games would suggest.
I'm very wary of that statement. I'm extremely wary of that statement. But I want to say two things. One is that I know for sure that in the game we played, which was, I think, 15 people, something like that.
Yeah.
4 of them, 2 of them are sitting at this table, had a bad time. But I will also say that the majority of people there had a very good time. So I just want to say, because this game is very hot and very popular, and a lot of people are talking about it, I just want to say that if this sounds like a game that's for you, it probably is, and you're probably going to love it. But it's not for everybody at all.
100%.
And I think that is something that is not made clear enough about this game. I just, like, if you're not into social deduction and you're not into almost role play, I think you need to be either big into social deduction or into, like, the theatrics or something like that. You need to be into one of those two things, or it's not going to be for you, I think, is my opinion.
I think it's fair. And I also think it's hugely group dependent. Like, even if you are super into it, you need a ton of like-minded people who are also into it to get anything out of it. And I think that's about going to cover all we have to say about Blood in the Clocktower. I do have this coming at some point in the future, so I am excited to play more of it. I don't think I will be roping all of everyone at this table into those games.
You're going to need me to be the DM.
At some point, absolutely. I would love that.
I'll be better at it than you.
Why are you so mean?
What that was
every week, Christina. I have to put up with this every week.
You didn't think that was funny?
No.
It was true.
No.
You think he's better at being a storyteller?
Yes.
Neelan?
Yes.
Because of his voice?
And more.
How much and more? Like what? Let's talk percentages.
Oh God! All right, let's get back on track. Let's get back on track.
Okay. As we do every week, I think, we are going to read a review from a beloved listener. So this is from Miyako789, and he or she says, best new board game podcast. Absolutely a day one download each week. Please don't stop making the show. That's it. Short and sweet.
That's right. That's all we need.
That's great.
Thank you
very much, Miyako.
Does it say the star number, the star count?
It's fine. It's 5.
Come on.
Oh, that was 5
Why
stars.
are you asking?
I don't know if I was supposed to say that.
We don't get anything but 5-star reviews in the show.
You don't read anything with 5-star reviews.
Exactly. Okay, let's move into our feature topic for the week. And I think we've already sort of leaned into the direction of this a fair bit with 2 games, I think, because I think Panic on Wall Street and Blood on the Clocktower are both good candidates for games that perhaps are somewhat elevated by the experience of playing them than just their base mechanics would suggest. I think the easiest way to sort of get into this discussion is to go straight into an example of a game around the table. So Kellen, why don't you start us off? What's a good example of a game for you that is perhaps more than just its mechanics?
So I think popular examples might be helpful too, and like Munchkin is probably a classic example, or even things like Throw Burrito, where it's like the game exists because you're yelling and screaming with each other and what you bring to the game as opposed to the mechanisms. And one could argue that those mechanisms are the impetus by which the group gets into it. But truly, like if you have a fun group, you can have a fun time doing almost anything in board gaming, as we showed the world at SHUX 2019. So for me, I think a great example of this is a card game by Friedman and Fries called Fuji Flush. Fuji Flush is in my top 50 board games because of the experiences that we've had playing it. However, it is a card game that you can get really super, super hosed because you have to get rid of all your cards and your last card could be a 2, and then you basically have no chance to win the game at all unless everybody else then gets hosed, and then you might have a chance to win the game. So mechanically speaking, the game is almost a good game. It almost feels like it works, but it kind of doesn't. But that doesn't matter because when we play it, we've invented the choo-choo train. Where instead of playing the game, you're trying to get everyone to be in an alliance with you. And playing the card, and starting the choo-choo train is a top 50 board game experience. Fuji Flush is a great example for me of a game that I don't think is good, but is still good.
2 words. Happy Salmon. Top 2 games of all time.
Wow, this is a short list.
Is Happy Salmon a bad game? Who could say? I bring Happy Salmon to every get together. Like people that play games, people that don't play games. I know it's dumb and I know you look so silly and stupid. I don't care. I don't even care when people start filming us. And I know it's going to be horrible and I know I'm going to be embarrassed later, but it doesn't matter because of how much fun we're having. But yeah, it's not a good game, but it's so much fun.
Two games that come to mind that are high on my top 100, and these are probably among two of the games that people question me about the most when it comes to like how could you put this so high on your list, are True Colors and Scruples.
So much fun.
Yeah, so much fun. But I mean, really, they're not so far away from a game like Cards Against Humanity, really. It's super good.
They're pretty far away.
You think so?
Yeah,
I mean, in terms of the mechanisms, in terms of like what keeps them together.
True.
They're not like, well, actually, there's a little bit like Cards Against Humanity, a little bit. But it's just in terms of the glue that keeps those games together. It's all about the social aspect. It's all about being comfortable with the people you're around. And there are two games that I absolutely love playing, that when you're playing with people that you are, again, comfortable around and that you want to sort of connect with, I just love them. But in reality, they're, again, not so far away from like Truth or Dare, really. But they're great games.
One of the ones that comes to mind to me is a game that I've played fairly frequently is Zombicide, which is a game that there are straight up mechanics in that game that I just think are pretty bad, but it still creates this very specific experience that few games do, which is you look at the board of Zombicide and you just have so many enemies covering the board, and then you get to mow them all down. Like it's a game about just the sheer amount of carnage you can do in a short amount of time, which very few games replicate, either just because of the lack of components, really, because it's just literally a board full of plastic and you have machine guns and katanas and you just run into a group of zombies and kill 10 of them in your turn. And it's just like a cathartic experience despite the mechanics being pretty rote, I would say. That's the best example for me. Like, I will continue with specific groups of people to have fun playing Zombicide, even if it's a game that I would never register as something that I would say is good game design.
I mean, and I think the podcast, cemented as a podcast classic, Hundreds of Horses, is probably a great one to discuss. I think seeing the Shut Up and Sit Down Twitter, they took our copy of Hundreds of Horses and played it after the con, and Matt Lees tweeted us to let us know how much fun they had with it. And they sent us pictures of like,
they're playing on the subway or something.
Yeah, and then horses and top hats. And yes, Hundreds of Horses is not a good game. But I guess that gets to the impetus of what I think is actually interesting here, and something that we've argued about ad nauseum off air, which is Hundreds of Horses is bad, but it leads to some of the best times that we've had together as friends. And so therefore, ergo, it must be good.
Right.
And I think that Mark, where some of our arguing started from, is Blood on the Clocktower.
Yeah.
And if Blood on the Clocktower provides incredible experiences, how could you say with a straight face, without a smirk on your face,
I'm almost smirking,
that it is a bad game?
Because it's a bad game that provides great experiences.
But what is that? Like it's a bad movie that provides great experiences?
Okay, so tell me what is bad about Hundreds of Horses? Didn't think about that, did you?
Well, I mean, it's designed for 5-year-old girls.
Okay, but
there's no way to win.
No, you could win.
I mean,
you get points. What are you talking about? And you can get horses.
Everyone's a winner.
But tell me what is bad about it.
It's like apples to apples, except only equestrian themed.
Okay, so
is that the right word?
Yeah.
Isn't equine?
Yeah.
Equestrian.
And equine and equestrian?
Yeah. Equestrian is a sport.
Equestrian is the riding horses. Yeah. Equine is horses.
How do you know this?
I know words.
Mensa.
I'm English.
Mensa.
It's not because you're English.
We invented the language.
So there is an aspect of Hundreds of Horses that is bad. Now, if you want to call
that... I'm telling you, you have to prove this, homeboy.
Okay.
You're making the claim.
Okay, so can we agree that there is an aspect of Hundreds of Horses that is bad?
Yes.
Okay, so if we want to call that the game of it, or if you want to call it whatever you want to call it, that's fine. But there is certainly an aspect of Hundreds of Horses that is bad. In terms of what a board game is, there is some board game-ness of it that is bad. I think that is unquestionable. See? See or no? See. He's saying yes. With his eyes, he's saying yes. So, if there is something, there's something bad about the game that doesn't keep it from being a good experience. Blood on the Clocktower, same thing. In my opinion, it is a bad game that can give people who like it a great experience. But it is in what I perceive as the essence of board games, it fails.
I've struggled with this a lot. So the inroad to this discussion was literally the night we played Blood on the Clocktower. And I was sitting there on the bed saying to Mark, on the bed we shared, saying to Mark, Blood on the Clocktower was a game.
Yeah.
I have a good time playing it.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is a good game.
Right.
And you would be like, yes, no.
Yes.
And and the thing is, it's like, to some extent, like, I understand what you're saying, like, because, and this is a very weird position, especially when you're trying to critically evaluate games, right? Is you have to be able to find concrete ways to describe the systems that sort of either make it better or worse than other games. But I think I'm much more willing to say that a game that provides a good experience is a good game regardless of the strength of its systems.
So let me ask you the question that Kellen failed to answer. What is bad about Hundreds of Horses? Would you say Hundreds of Horses is a good game?
Well, this is the thing. I struggle with this because no, I don't think I would say Hundreds of Horses is a good game. And the thing is also, like, and to be clear, like the reason I've struggled with this is because as soon as I get questioned about to this granularity, kind of my argument breaks down because I don't think I would say Hundreds of Horses is a good game. I couldn't specifically nail why unless we delved into the scoring of it or the way the cards are designed. But again, have had nothing but fun anytime I played it. And that's not to say that that's like bad or even needs to be universally true, because it's like the thing that I struggle with is this idea of like guilty pleasures, right? Like I have this sort of idea that a guilty pleasure is a thing you like that you are just afraid to admit you like,
right? And
does that make sense? But like at what point are you just lying to yourself about what constitutes being good? I don't know.
No,
I haven't figured this out.
I wouldn't say that people who are fans of Blood on the Clocktower at all, I would never say that it is a guilty pleasure for them in the way you're describing, which I think is an accurate portrayal of the phrase guilty pleasure. It's like something that you don't want to let out. But what I'm saying is that it feels like a semantic argument to me, because whatever you will concede is a bad part of a game like Hundreds of Horses, which I agree is a fun experience and a fun game. Okay, I'll even say it's a fun game. That's fine. But whatever failing it has, and I think we'll agree it has there is something failing about it, or something not failing. Maybe that's not the wrong word. There's something lacking. There's some aspect of Hundreds of Horses that it fails at. There's something. Whatever you want to call that, whether you want to call it the gaminess of it, you want to call it whatever you want to call it, I think that is the failure of Blood on the Clocktower.
So here's where this gets interesting, because let's stick with Hundreds of Horses. Okay. Could you conceive of a game that is mechanically more interesting than Hundreds of Horses that is still as fun? Because like I think it's the looseness, the lightness, the silliness of Hundreds of Horses that makes it really fun. At some extent, like if you're making it more gamified, making it more mechanically solid, you're losing the essence of what makes it fun. Surely.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'll grant you that. I'll grant you that in this case of Hundreds of Horses, if you try to make it more gamey, it would lose something. Sure, but I don't think that's true of games in general.
That's sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah, maybe Blood on the Clocktower can never be the game that I want. I don't think that's the case, actually. I think Blood on the Clocktower could be something that I like to play if it was different. I mean, different enough that it's probably would be unrecognizable.
Sure.
But I think that the bones are there. I think that's probably not true with Hundreds of Horses. I think Hundreds of Horses is fundamentally more of a trifle, and you get the fun because it's just silly.
That's interesting.
I don't know if this is interesting or not, but I was wondering for Mark. For a fellow Spike.
Yes.
Where does...
Spike high five for the audience.
Spike high five.
There you go.
Beautiful. So there's always got to be competitiveness, right?
Right.
But where's the line where sometimes the gaminess, or sometimes you say it's not a game if you can't win? Like that's kind of what Kellen was saying about Fuji Flush. Like you can't actually, there's not a real way to say like, this is my strategy, this is how I'm winning. It breaks down. So at what point is it okay to be like, you know what, it doesn't matter, this is really fun? I don't know how to articulate this question,
I think for me, it's the way it's presented. I think that's where Blood on the Clocktower lost it for me, because either through my own error or by the way it was sold to me, I thought of it as a social deduction game. So if you're going to tell me that we're going to play Hundreds of Horses and it's a silly game, I go in there fine. If we're going to play Once Upon a Time and you're telling me it's a storytelling game, for me, the game part of a storytelling game is like lessened. Like, okay, we're going to be having a storytelling experience. So if Blood on the Clocktower had been sold to me as, hey, we're going to have it's like a storytelling game, I think the way I would see it would have changed. So it's all about what you're promising or what you're telling me that is going to happen. I think that's where it changes.
Okay. Yeah. I do think it's interesting which games people choose to let go of their competitiveness, seriousness, and which games they won't. Like, for example, Loopin Louie.
Yes, I was going to bring this up as well. Yeah.
Like, Mark Bigney loves this game. And, like, he didn't necessarily say, I recognize this is a bad game. But, like, you recognize how silly it is. It's not really, like, you hit a thing. It's just, like, there's not much there. But he has so much fun with it. Whereas Mark was just like, no, it's a horrible game,
right? And
I will not have fun playing it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it does seem like sometimes there are specific games that you're willing to go for bat for in this argument, and others that you're less so, I guess. And I feel like that just boils down to specific experiences.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to correlate with the job of being a critic, I find.
Yeah, sure, that's fair. I mean, that's a problem I think you have with criticizing party games in general.
Sure,
sort of
exactly. You almost have to like caveat them by saying it's like, okay, this is very, very silly, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's going to wrap up our discussion on this, and that's probably going to do it for the show. Thank you all so much for listening to another episode of the show. You can find us on all of our social media. That's on Twitter, that's on Facebook, that's on Instagram. As always, please come hang out in our Discord. It's been sort of popping off with new people in the last couple of weeks. It's getting very, very buzzy. We're talking about squash this week for some reason. I don't know where that came from and how that happened and why it's still a thing, but we're talking about all sorts of things, mostly board games. If you want to come hang out with a bunch of friendly people and just chat board games all day, boardgamebarrage.com/Discord is the place to go. Otherwise, thank you as always to Heart Society for our intro and outro music, What's in Your Mind, Kid?
And a big thank you to the Blue Tank.
Of course, yes.
For classing up the joint.
Thank you. I realize we say as always a lot on this show.
Yeah.
As always?
Yeah, as always. We say it a
Bible.
lot. Yeah, exactly. It's an in-joke. Don't worry about it. Cool. Thank you all so much for listening. Goodbye.
See ya.
Bye. Kellen is dead.
I almost fell asleep
Oof.
Our discussion was so boring.
when Mark was talking. Got him again.
This week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the games that we played at SHUX that we didn't already talk about last week. We're also going to be our feature. This happens a lot.
I'm not used to this. So many bloopers live.
No, this is
Bleeps and bloops.
exceptionally bad.
We're full of
This is pretty bad. It's been 2 weeks.
Okay, Nealon, you're the hype man, right?
Uh-huh.
The magician.
Wait, yeah.
One could say.
I thought Mark was that.
No, I'm definitely the hype man.
And your intro to the episode is, we're going to talk about the games we played at SHUX that we didn't cover last week.
No,
Exactly.
that was fine.
No, what do you mean? Where's the hype?
I had the question in my mind. If I was a listener, they already talked about the games they played at SHUX.
Okay.
I'm not going to listen to this episode.
I'm going to say this even better. We'll do this again even better then.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, even better. It's a very low bar.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's just going to keep getting better. No, I think there's a better way we can frame this. Okay. This week on the show, yep. What was that look for? You just like rolled your head.
I wasn't looking. Don't always look at me.
Okay, fine.
I can't look at anyone.
This is going to
gonna
be
be
a
a
3-hour
taping.
record.
I
Yeah.
did not get any sleep. I woke up at 4 a.m. It is now almost 10 p.m. I've been working.
Great. This is punchy.
Yeah,
Kellen.
I'm
This
a
is great.
worker.
Yeah.
It's a Sunday.
Everyone loves
I have to
delirious.
go to work tomorrow.
I'm a worker. It's a Sunday.
Ooh.
All right.
Okay. This week on the show, we're going to be looking back at some more games we played at SHUX.
2019.
Yep. Yeah, we spoke about some of these in our panel last week, but we played a bunch more games, so we're going to dig into those as this. Sorry. I love it.
Just stare in the corner the entire time.
Why
we
are you
record.
just laughing? Nothing funny's
We played a
happened.
bunch more games.
We're showmen. He's the greatest showman on earth.
The greatest showman. Yep, that's me. Okay.
I won't laugh.
This week on the show, we're going to be talking about more games we played at SHUX. We spoke about a bunch of them on the panel last week, but we played more games. Good God.
Go down that same path. Of course he's going to laugh if you go down the exact same path.
Phrase it differently.
Jesus Christ.
I said more games. What else can I say?
But she's waiting for you to say a bunch more, and the anticipation is killing her. You can't say we played... And she's
going to say we played a bunch of games, but we played more games. It's good. It's good. I like it.
It's good. Yeah, it's great. Okay, what's the third way that I can phrase this sentence?
Let's do it right, Neil.
Oh, God. Okay. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about... Sorry.
Yes, there's no chance.
There's no chance.
We're gonna get by this.
It's not an
The end of the
episode.
show.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Were we talking about the witch?
What?
That was not funny. There was a witch. She had the ears. It was
can't
very
do
clear
this.
what I was referring
We
to.
can't do this right now. We have to record something. We've not got through the intro. How are we going to do the whole episode?
All right. I'm taking over because delirium is setting in. We played a lot of games at SHUX. We already talked. Well, I didn't talk about any of them.
Wait, but Christina, how many more games would you say we played?
We played a bunch of games, and we're going to talk about a bunch more that we played. Okay, you got this. You got this. We're good.
Everyone's done. Everyone's done.
Yes.
Okay. This week on the... Oh, my God.
What the hell? Come on. Come on, we're serious now. Come on.
Professionals.
Focus.
We are all professional podcasters. All three of them are keeled over in tears of laughter while I'm holding this together on my own.
Just go.
Just go. Okay. This...
Come on, God.
I'm trying! I'm trying! Okay. As soon as I start talking. Okay. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about more games that we played at SHUX. We spoke a bunch... Okay. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about more games that we played at SHUX. We obviously spoke about a few of these last week. Okay. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about more games that we played at SHUX. We obviously covered a lot last week.